pṛthag-bhāvāprasiddheś saha-bhāvo na sidhyati katamasmin pṛthag-bhāve saha-bhāvaṃ satīcchasi.
pṛthag-bhāvāprasiddheś saha-bhāvo na sidhyati katamasmin pṛthag-bhāve saha-bhāvaṃ satīcchasi. MMK chapter 6 verse 9. But because the separate existence of things is insubstantiated, coexistence is not established. Where things are existing separately, in which of them are you seeking coexistence? So this again is addressed to the opponent, who is, as I read this chapter, the opponent is not a non-Buddhist. He's a Buddhist teacher or Buddhist commentator who has failed to understand emptiness deeply enough, or he's failed to understand the real meaning of emptiness. And this is precisely the same as my experience of being taught by Gudo Nishijima, who thought that emptiness meant things being as they are, which is true at a conventional level of truth, maybe. But as I mentioned yesterday, his understanding of the teaching that the blue lotus opens in fire is an example of relativity in Buddhism. But relativity is a relation between two things, as it's also understood in science. Generally speaking, Carlo Rovelli has got a different understanding. So the blue lotus opens in fire means there is no blue lotus as a thing unto itself. The blue lotus is empty of itself, but full of. It's a symbol of coolness. It grows in cool water, relatively cool water. But there's no blue lotus without the strong summer heat. So it's not a teaching of relativity, it's a teaching of emptiness ultimately. And so it's a great shame that me and Nishijima Sensei couldn't have explored this verse together. It really is a shame. He would have understood this if he was here now and we were exploring it together. I know he would have understood it. The shame was that his attitude in his old age was summed up when I asked him to go and have some Alexander lessons with a teacher in Japan who taught me. And because I knew that he could learn something, he could deepen his understanding if he did that. But he wanted to keep his position as the all-knowing Zen master. And so he absolutely summed himself up when he said it like this. If Alexander technique is the same as Buddhism, there is no need for me to study it. And if the Alexander technique is different from Buddhism, I don't have any interest in studying it. So that statement, that assertion, that strong assertion, was predicated on the assumption that his understanding of the Buddhist teaching was perfect. He understood everything that needed to be understood. But what I knew is that he didn't. If he'd understood the Buddhist teaching more deeply, he wouldn't tell people to do this, that and the other, to pull in the chin, to keep the neck bone straight vertically. That was the tell by which I knew that his understanding wasn't deep enough. And I like to contrast that with the attitude of my Alexander teacher, my Alexander head of training, Ray Evans. When he was dying with cancer, his wife Joyce told people in the Alexander world that they didn't want visitors. But my wife, following her own intuition, a couple of weeks before Ray died, and just before I went to France for the summer, she phoned up Joyce and said, "We're coming over, Joyce, in half an hour or something." And Joyce said, "Oh, okay then." And when we arrived, Joyce said, "Oh, Ray's had a shave. He'll feel better." Or she might say that on the phone. It'll get Ray to have a shave. He'll feel better. So Ray was sort of almost drifting in and out of consciousness. One thing I remember, he was trying to make a joke. Every possible opportunity, he turned things into a joke. But what was particularly interesting, I heard from Joyce that the cancer drugs were making him sick, making him vomit, and when Joyce went into the room where Ray was bedbound, she found one of his books on anatomy and physiology open at the page that explained the vomit reflex. So there he was, dying of cancer with just 2 or 3 weeks left to live, and he was still deepening his understanding of what was going on, in particular reflexes. That's how I became interested in reflexes, through Ray. So as he was vomiting away there, he was trying to understand the process, the vomit reflex. So there for me is a contrast between the religious attitude of the patriarch who is sitting on his high horse and thinks he already understands everything, sort of papal infallibility, and a person who's devoted his life to the Alexander technique, which is much more open-ended, openness being really explicitly a key part of it. And I'm aware that probably I take after Nishijima Sensei in many ways, more than Ray in that sense. Hence the necessity to really be conscious that we're here to deepen our understanding. The aim is to deepen our understanding. Tattva darshanat. Samsara mulam samskaran avidvan samskarotyata. The samskaras, which are the root of samsara, thus does the ignorant one do, on the basis of non-empty conceptions, like establishing my legacy. See, that was Nishijima Sensei. In his old age, he wanted to establish his legacy. He was through with trying to understand things more and more deeply. It was time for him to establish my legacy, which was samskaras. That was his doing on the basis of a non-empty conception. Because establishment is siddhi. It's the idea of the realist opponent that things can be established. So, samsara mulam samskaran avidvan samskarotyata. The samskaras, the doings which are the root of samsara, aimless wandering, cycling through birth and death, aimlessly. Samsara mulam samskaran avidvan, the ignorant one, samskarotyata, accumulates thus. Avidvan karakastasman, therefore the ignorant one is the doer. Navidvams tattva darshanat, not the wise one, because of looking into what is. Tattva darshanat. That's how I prefer to understand it. The non-empty translation is because of seeing reality. See, the wise one sees reality. That was Nishijima Sensei's viewpoint. He was the wise one who saw reality. But I'm saying he's the ignorant one who failed to look deeply into what is. That's why he didn't want to have an Alexander lesson. He didn't want to look into what I thought I'd discovered. So, avidyayam nirudayam samskaranam asambhavaha. Where ignorance is being stopped, there is the non-coming into being of samskaras. Avidyaya nirodastu, but the stopping of ignorance, jnanasyaiva bhavanat, is thanks to cultivating just this understanding. We're here to cultivate our understanding. We're not here to think we've arrived at the end of understanding And then so it's time to establish our legacy. So to start from the English, I'll translate it again. But because the separate existence of things is insubstantiated, coexistence is not established. Na sidhyati, it's not established. Where things are existing separately, in which of them are you seeking coexistence? So the first line is about aprasiddhi, non-substantiation, insubstantiation, or non-establishment. So prasiddhi means not established, insubstantiated. And sidhyati, also from the root sid, means not established. So in the compound pṛthag-bhāvāprasiddheś, it's pṛthag-bhāva. Pṛthag-bhāva is separate existence of things, we've had before, and aprasiddhi is insubstantiation, not being established. And here it's used in the ablative. So the whole compound is pṛthag-bhāvāprasiddheś. That means, the ablative means from, on the grounds of, because. Because the separate existence of things is insubstantiated. And then cha, I've taken it as but. But because the separate existence of things is insubstantiated, coexistence, saha-bhāvaṃ, nominative singular masculine. Then before na, that goes to saha-bhāvo. Saha-bhāvo na sidhyati. Coexistence is not established. So it's important to understand the difference between, in Nāgārjuna's jargon, between na sidhyati, which means it's not established, and na vidyate, which means it's not found. So if for example, we take the example of bumblebees and lavender. Okay, so we'd say, he wouldn't say bumblebees and lavender na vidyante, they're not found. He wouldn't even say the coexistence of bumblebees and lavender is not found, because you can find it. You can find bumblebees and lavender coexisting. What he would say is that coexistence is na sidhyati. It's not established. So what's being denied is coexistence as a real phenomena, as a real thing that's established in the conception of the realist, who sees reality, harsh, objective reality out there, as being composed of real stuff, real things, interacting or coexisting with each other. So the Zen realist has got the same viewpoint as most modern scientists. I say someone like Carlo Rovelli seems to me to be the exception that proves the rule, because he talks about, as far as he's been able to discover, there are no things like stones. What there are empty happenings like kisses, and that seems to me very consistent with what Nāgārjuna is saying. So the question that's addressed in the second line to the realist opponent could equally be addressed to modern molecular physicists, for example, because molecular physics is based on the assumption there are such things as molecules interacting or coexisting with other molecules. And so the question is, where things are existing separately, so that's a locative absolute phrase, pṛthag-bhāve sati. Pṛthag-bhāve is locative of separate existence, or separate existence of things, and sati is locative of sat, which is the present participle of as, as in asti, there is. And so sati means there being. So pṛthag-bhāve sati, there being separate existence of things, or I've translated where things are existing separately, in which of them, katamasmin, that's locative singular of katama. Katama means which or what. So katamasmin, in which, saha-bhāvaṃ, accusative, coexistence, sidhyati, second person singular of ish, to seek, to wish for, to pursue. But here, sidhyati, you are seeking. Katamasmin pṛthag-bhāve, saha-bhāvaṃ satīcchasi. Where things are existing separately, in which of them are you seeking coexistence? And 2 years ago I wrote a footnote, which I'm going to quote. 2 years on, I look at most of the footnotes I wrote 2 years ago and don't find them particularly easy reading or useful. But this one, I think I'll read out. I think it sounds okay. The opponent sees reality in terms of mutual relationships between coexisting non-empty things. Many modern particle physicists seem to see reality in just this way, as if things like electrons, protons, quarks, etc. were self-existing, non-empty things that interacted with each other as such. If we proceed on the basis that electrons and protons coexist or interact with each other, insofar as we continue to conceive electrons and protons as self-existing things, our analysis can only go more and more in the direction of separateness. The point about an electron, that footnote actually was a footnote to the previous verse. That's why I said about going more and more in the direction of separateness, because it attempt to explain in the previous verse, pṛthag-bhāvāṃ bhūyā icchasi. You are redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness, or you are pursuing separateness more and more, further and further into the distance. The point about an electron and a proton in light of emptiness is that a single electron is empty of self-existence as a single electron, but is full of all the other electrons and protons in the universe. And similarly, a single proton is empty of self-existence as a proton, but is full of all the other electrons and protons in the universe. This, however, goes completely against our usual way of thinking about the world. Hence, even while endeavouring to clarify the meaning of emptiness in Nāgārjuna's teaching, in his commentary on vigraha-vyavartani vritti, so vigraha-vyavartani vritti it means something like overturning of objections, or the turning back of arguments. It's a work by Nāgārjuna that's not in metric verse, which makes it somehow more problematic in some respects to establish the text. And I did translate it. I have translated a draft of it for my own sort of study before I started translating MMK in earnest. I'm not intending to publish that draft, but basically he's saying the same thing that he says in MMK. But there's a translation of it by Jan Westerhoff, which is based on one that was done previously by Johnson and was it Bhattacharya and Kunst. So at the end of his life, E.H. Johnson, it seems, was beginning to grapple with Nāgārjuna. Anyway, Jan Westerhoff kind of gives himself away with this paragraph. We think we are surrounded by a collection of more or less stable and autonomous agents, and therefore develop all kinds of likes and dislikes towards them. All there is, however, are constantly changing combinations of physical and psychological components that we arrange into personalised parcels. See, yeah, we develop all kinds of likes and dislikes towards them. And I dislike Jan Westerhoff's attitude for this reason. What's his motivation? What is the fucking point of your effort, Jan Westerhoff? What are you motivated by? Are you out to deepen your understanding of what the Buddha taught? Or are you interested in an academic career? Get your PhD and get your fame and profit and publish your book, and your fame spreads far and wide. Because if you're interested in deepening your understanding, you shouldn't spend so much time studying Nāgārjuna and then come up with a conclusion which is totally contrary to everything that Nāgārjuna is saying. Here's what he's concluded again. All there is, however, are constantly changing combinations of physical and psychological components that we arrange into personalised parcels. No, that is a totally non-empty assertion. There are no physical and psychological components. What there are empty happenings. Physical and psychological components are what the Buddha calls samskaras. And you have demonstrated your ignorance, Jan Westerhoff, by turning empty happenings into physical and psychological components. Samsara mulam samskaran avidvan samskarot yata. Thus does the ignorant one accumulate the doings, the confections, the components, the physical and psychological components which are the root of samsara. Avidvan karakas tasman. The ignorant one, therefore, is the doer. So this has got everything to do with doing. I actually, when I was living in Aylesbury, in all friendliness, I sent Jan Westerhoff an email saying, come for an Alexander lesson. But my intention was that I'll show you the difference between doing and non-doing. Because what he said is a kind of doing. It's a mental samskara. It's a confection of the mind. It's doing a confecting a confection with the mind and then in words. And the best antidote to that I know of is Alexander teaching to understand the meaning of non-doing. So, avidvan karakas tasman, therefore, the ignorant one, you, Jan Westerhoff, the ignorant one, is the doer. Because with your doing mind, you've gone and done that. You've written that rubbish. All there is, however, are constantly changing combinations of physical and psychological components. Avidvan karakas tasman, therefore, on that basis, the ignorant one is the doer. Navidvams tatvadarshanat, not the wise one, because of looking into what is. Or, more profoundly, because of reality being realised. And that's what you can experience in an Alexander lesson. Instead of you making an effort to sit and stand, you can experience something seeming to do itself, reality realising itself. And if you're open to it, that can be a life-changing experience. But Jan Westhoff didn't reply to my email, and Nishijima Sensei didn't take me up on my suggestion that he go and have an Alexander lesson. What he did, I heard from Jeremy Pearson, was that they chuckled to each other. Oh, here, is it Alexander the Great? Ha ha ha. Yes, yeah, actually, FM Alexander was great. And if you hadn't been so arrogant in thinking you didn't need to deepen your understanding of the Buddha's teaching, you would have gone for a lesson. And who knows, we might have had a Nishijima cross-translation of MMK, which would have made a good thing for everybody. Pṛthag-bhāvāprasiddheś saha-bhāvo sidhyati. Katamasmin pṛthag-bhāve saha-bhāvaṃ satīcchasi. But because the separate existence of things is insubstantiated, coexistence is not established. Where things are existing separately, in which of them are you seeking coexistence?
pṛthag-bhāvāprasiddheś saha-bhāvo sidhyati. Katamasmin pṛthag-bhāve saha-bhāvaṃ satīcchasi.